Nobody in Atlanta thought reality television could ever spill into real life with such intensity, but the courthouse steps that morning proved every doubter wrong. The air was thick, heavy, and alive with the same kind of electricity that crawls through the air before a thunderstorm you know you can't outrun. Reporters lined the marble steps like vultures waiting on a battlefield, cameras stacked in towers, lenses aimed with the hunger of predators. Boom mics stretched across the crowd like spears, and producers who normally worked behind the curtain were now reduced to background shadows in a spectacle that belonged to the city. Long before sunrise, fans had already split into two loud armies, one screaming at the top of their lungs to protect Yandy, the other shouting just as fiercely to let Rasheeda speak her truth. It was chaos pretending to wear the mask of justice, and the entire city felt the magnitude of what was about to unfold. This wasn't VH1, this wasn't a reunion. This was a trial with the weight of history behind it, and every flash of every camera made it feel like the world was about to witness a reckoning. When the first black SUV pulled up, the energy of the crowd surged forward like a wave hitting concrete. The door opened slowly, deliberately, as if whoever was inside understood that the cameras weren't just waiting, they were starving. Out stepped Yandy, her head lifted high, her cheek still carrying the dark reminder of the night that had dragged them all here. Sunglasses shielded her bruise, but nothing could hide the quiet steel in her walk. She wore a sharp gray suit, pressed and perfect, the color of resilience forged in fire. She didn't wave. She didn't slow down. She didn't acknowledge the chaos. Instead, she moved through the storm like it wasn't even there, each step climbing higher as chants from her supporters roared around her. Fans raised hand-painted signs decorated with golden crowns, the words "respect over ratings" painted in glitter that caught the morning light. They chanted her name in unison, and the sound followed her like a protective army up those stone steps. Behind her, her attorney carried a folder so thick it looked like the weight of an entire season's worth of secrets bound in leather. Minutes later, a second SUV rolled up and the tone of the crowd snapped in half. Cheers and boos collided in the air because by now everyone had already chosen their side. Rasheeda emerged first, dressed head to toe in black, her chin high, her jawline sharp with sleepless defiance. Sunglasses masked her eyes, but the tension in her body spoke louder than her voice ever could. Kirk trailed beside her, his hood pulled up, trying to vanish into invisibility. But invisibility was impossible. Every microphone tilted toward them, every blogger shoved forward, questions cutting like daggers in the air. "Rasheeda, do you regret attacking Yandy? Kirk, are you standing by your wife or staying silent again?" Was this entire moment scripted by producers? Rasheeda refused to answer. Her lips pressed so tightly together that her red lipstick looked more like a wound than makeup. Every step she took up those stairs looked like a dare to anyone watching, as though she would crumble before she would ever admit defeat. And then came the third storm, the one no one had invited but everyone expected. Tasha K stood planted on the curb like she owned the courthouse itself. Phone in hand, microphone burning with the red light of a live feed, her voice carried with a smooth poison that her audience of hundreds of thousands tuned in to hear. "We live, baby," she said, her tone dripping with smug satisfaction. "Y'all came here for a courtroom, but what you're about to witness is history in the making." Her live stream comments scrolled faster than the screen could handle. She leaned into the lens, lowering her voice to a whisper sharp enough to cut. "And I got footage the network buried, clips they don't ever want you to see." The internet detonated within seconds. Hashtags spiraled across platforms. Team Yandy, cancel Rasheeda, courtroom fallout. The narrative had already begun to spin out of control, and the hearing hadn't even started. Inside, the difference was suffocating. The courtroom wasn't dressed for television. There were no stage lights, no reunion stage seating. The air inside was cold, sterile, and heavy with silence. Yet the cast carried chaos like perfume, an aura no room could cleanse. Erica Mena sat in the front row, her body leaning forward, both hands clasped as though she was praying for carnage. Carly Red hid behind her oversized sunglasses, her phone tilted low, already recording discreet clips she'd upload as soon as she could frame them with the perfect caption. Scrappy sat in the back, arms folded tight across his chest, his face unreadable, as though he wanted to disappear and yet couldn't look away. The judge's bench loomed higher than any reunion moderator's chair, carved oak that made even the loudest personalities in Atlanta look small. When the clerk banged the gavel, the noise from outside melted into an eerie silence. Case number 14587, Smith versus Robinson. "Assault charge," the clerk announced, her voice flat and dry as parchment. All eyes snapped forward toward the two women who had carried entire seasons of love and hip-hop on their shoulders. Yandy sat straight, her bruise louder than any testimony. Rasheeda shifted in her chair, her palm clenched so hard her nails dug into her skin. The judge entered, a woman whose gaze alone felt like it could cut through glass. One sweep of her eyes across the courtroom, and she sighed softly, as if she already knew this was no ordinary case. "Let's proceed," she said, and the storm officially began. Yandy's attorney rose first, tall and deliberate, his voice smooth yet sharp. "Your Honor," he began, not even opening the folder in his hand, "my client came to work. She left in an ambulance." He gestured toward a large screen wheeled to the side of the room. When the footage flickered alive, the gallery gasped. There was no spin. No cutaway confessionals. Just raw chaos. The screen played the reunion fight in its unedited brutality. Rasheeda lunging forward, security scrambling, Yandy stumbling backward with a scream ripped straight into the microphones. No soundtrack. No producer tricks. Just hands and impact. The silence in the room thickened to suffocation as the footage looped a second time. This time slowed to show the blow frame by frame. "This is not entertainment," the attorney said, his voice steady but cutting through the stillness. "This is assault, and no amount of editing or excuses can erase what we all see." Mrs. Smith was attacked where she should have been safe. He dropped photographs onto the evidence table, medical reports, hospital scans, and the most haunting image, Yandy's bruised face, swollen and dark, like spilled ink spreading across fragile skin. A ripple of gasps escaped the jury. Even the judge's lips pressed tighter. She doesn't want ratings. She wants accountability. Rasheeda's lawyer rose quickly, his voice trembling as he scrambled for defense. "Your Honor, context matters. This is a highly produced show designed for maximum shock. My client was provoked repeatedly. Words can wound too, and what you see is a woman pushed beyond reason." He gestured half-heartedly at the screen. "This is entertainment. This is not reality." The judge cut him off with a glare. "Counselor, I don't care about network edits. I care about what I see, and what I see are hands." The weight of her words dropped like bricks. Rasheeda tightened in her seat, her lips trembling even as she forced them into a hard line. Kirk sat silent beside her, staring at the table, his silence loud enough to make the gallery whisper. When the judge allowed opening remarks from both women, the room braced. Yandy stood slowly, adjusting her suit with composure that made every eye follow her. She didn't raise her voice, but her words carried with a quiet power. "I am not here to perform," she said, her voice low but steady. "I am here because respect should not require stitches." The gallery leaned in. Even Erica blinked, stunned into silence. Yandy didn't look at Rasheeda once. She didn't need to. "I won't fight with fists. I won't fight with lies. I will fight with truth. And truth doesn't bruise." Her words landed like scripture, etched into the air. Then Rasheeda rose, her movements sharp, her tone louder, her desperation hidden under anger. "She's been in my face for months," she snapped, her voice breaking as her composure cracked. "Dragging my family, talking slick, poking me every chance she got. You poke a woman long enough, she's either gonna bleed or bite." I bit. Gasps ricocheted across the gallery. Her attorney tried to hush her with a hand on her arm, but she ripped it away. "I ain't perfect, but I ain't no monster. They told me they wanted Atlanta raw. They told me to give them Atlanta, and I did." The judge slammed the gavel. "Ms. Robinson, this is not television. This is a courtroom. Choose your words carefully." The silence afterward was heavier than any scream. Rasheeda sat down slowly, her body trembling even as she tried to hide it. When recess was called, the building erupted. Reporters sprinted into the halls, fans outside screamed so loud it rattled the windows, and Tasha K was already back live, her smirk wider than ever. "Did y'all see that footage? That wasn't editing, baby. That was hands on tape. But let me give you the real tea. Unseen hallway clips. Producers whispering to Rasheeda, telling her to give them Atlanta. What does that mean? Who profits when queens bleed?" Her chat exploded with fire emojis, crowns, and hashtags. Bloggers clipped her feed instantly. TikTok edits flooded timelines, and the phrase "give them Atlanta" trended with clown emojis before the recess was even over. Inside the gallery, Erica leaned over to Carly. "This ain't just a fight anymore," she whispered, her eyes locked on the courtroom door. Carly smirked, sliding her sunglasses down just enough to post a black screen story with a gold crown emoji. Scrappy muttered under his breath, "Damn," the single word as heavy as a verdict. Kirk sat stone-faced beside Rasheeda, but his silence screamed. "And Yandy?" Yandy sipped her water slowly, her bruised cheek catching the light. Her calm louder than all the chaos. The storm had only begun. The second half of the day carried a different weight, heavier than the first, as if the courthouse itself had swallowed the chaos and was now breathing it back into every corner. The gavel struck again, pulling everyone back into silence. But the silence didn't feel safe. It felt like the stillness before something breaks. The judge leaned forward, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. "We will proceed with evidence and witness testimony. No theatrics. No cameras running the show, just law. Cold, relentless law." Yandy's attorney stood first, his calm steady against the storm. "Your Honor, we present video evidence, hospital documentation, and a witness." The screen flickered alive again, this time not just reunion footage but raw backstage clips. The gallery leaned forward as producers' voices echoed through the grainy recording, "We need the moment. Give us Atlanta." Gasps cut through the room like glass shattering. Erica clutched her chest, Carly pulled her shades down, and Scrappy whispered, "Oh, hell nah." The attorney pressed on, his voice deliberate. "This wasn't about conflict. This was about profit. My client didn't sign up for stitches. She signed up for a show." That line was crossed. The first witness, a crew member, sat trembling on the stand. His words cracked as he admitted, "Yes, they told her to push it. They told her to prove she was the queen." The gallery erupted like a hornet's nest until the gavel slammed down for order. Rasheeda's lawyer jumped up with a loud objection, but the judge's eyes narrowed and she dismissed it cold. "The jury will consider." Rasheeda sat rigid, her knuckles white against the table. Kirk was beside her, his silence a shadow she couldn't shake. Her lawyer tried to pivot, voice desperate. "My client admits she lost control, but she was provoked. She's been baited for years. Is that criminal or is that human?" His words fell flat under the judge's cold stare, and then Rasheeda broke. Her voice cut through the courtroom without permission. "Y'all don't know what it's like!" She shouted, her chest rising and falling. "Dragged every season carrying this franchise while they laugh at my pain. She wanted me broken and she got it. But I won't sit here and let her play innocent." The gavel slammed again. "Ms. Robinson, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." The warning hung heavy, but her pride wouldn't let her bow. Yandy, calm and deliberate, rose in contrast. "I don't need to convince you," she said softly. The footage already spoke. But respect doesn't come from fists. Respect comes from standing tall when the world tries to drag you down. And that's why I'm still standing. The gallery buzzed, whispers of Queen rippling through. Even the judge's expression shifted just for a second. But the real twist didn't come from the women. It came from outside. Tasha K went live during recess again, her voice sharp as a blade. "Emails, baby." I got emails. Producers telling Rasheeda, "Bring the heat or lose screen time." Receipts don't lie. Within minutes, the internet set itself on fire. Producer setup trended beside Numam respect over ratings, and suddenly the network was no longer the silent puppet master. It was the villain. Inside, the judge acknowledged the storm. "If I find proof this network provoked violence, this case will not end with these two women." The producers in the back shifted uneasily, whispers crackling like dry leaves in a fire. For the first time, it wasn't just Yandy versus Rasheeda. It was cast against machine, and the room knew it. The courthouse felt heavier than it had all day, as though the walls themselves had absorbed every scream, every gasp, every whispered accusation, and now exhaled it back into the room. When the gavel struck again, the silence was sharp, cutting through the tension like glass shattering. Yandy sat still, calm but unshakable, her attorney sliding the flash drive across the table like it was a weapon capable of bringing the entire system to its knees. The screen came alive and the gallery leaned forward as one. The footage was undeniable, grainy but clear enough to catch the producers' voices pinning Rasheeda in the hallway, their words cold and transactional. "Swing or lose your spot." "Give us Atlanta," the air cracked. Gasps rolled like thunder. Erica whispered under her breath. They set her up. Carly tugged her glasses down, for once speechless. Scrappy shook his head slowly, his words low and heavy. "This bigger than beef." The producers in the back row shifted, suddenly the hunted instead of the hunters. The judge leaned forward, her gaze sharp, her tone final. If this network encouraged violence for profit, this case expands beyond Smith versus Robinson. A ripple of shock rolled across the gallery, but the producers looked pale, cornered by their own system. Rasheeda crumbled in real time, her mascara smearing down her cheeks as her voice cracked. They made me do it. Fight or be forgotten. I couldn't lose everything. Kirk reached for her shoulder, but the hiss from the gallery drowned him out. His silence all these years now looked like complicity, and no one was ready to forgive it. When the judge asked for final remarks, Yandy rose. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was calm, deliberate, and carried more weight than any outburst. I don't need her downfall, she said, her eyes sweeping across the courtroom. I need respect, for me. For every woman told her scars were ratings. For every mother whose pain was clipped and sold as drama. I will not let this system break me. Her words echoed through the stillness like a sermon, and for a moment even the judge's expression softened. The gavel came down hard. This case does not end here. This court will hold the network accountable. Until then, no contact between parties. The blow of wood against wood sounded like thunder, closing the day but opening a war much bigger than anyone imagined. Outside, the courthouse erupted. Protesters' chants of respect over ratings shook the stone steps like an earthquake. Reporters fought for sound bites, bloggers screamed into their live feeds, and Tasha K was already streaming, waving a stack of new documents. Contracts, payouts, NDAs, they can't hide anymore, she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. The comments on her live flew faster than lightning. Expose them all. Protect Yandy. Shut down the machine. That night, when Yandy returned to her hotel, the chaos still echoed outside, but the real storm slipped quietly under her door. Another plain envelope, thicker this time, waiting like a trap. Inside were contracts, payout receipts, and a list of names, cast members who had been baited, manipulated, and broken in the same way. At the bottom was a note scribbled in messy ink. The crown was never theirs. Take it back. She sat in silence, the bruise on her face already fading but her resolve burning brighter than ever. The war was no longer just hers. It belonged to every woman who had ever been pushed, silenced, or exploited for someone else's ratings. Atlanta thought it was watching two women fight, but the truth was far bigger. It wasn't Yandy versus Rasheeda anymore. It was caste versus machine, queens versus crowns, respect versus ratings. And as Yandy whispered to herself in the quiet, "This ain't over," the city knew she was right. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a movement too powerful to edit, too raw to bury, and too real to ignore. To bury and too real to ignore.